President Joe Biden came out and yet again gave a speech on Afghanistan. This is his final speech on Afghanistan. The whole point of this was to say, listen, the very last soldier has now left the Hamid Karzai airport, the airport in Kabul, and it's over. It's done. There are 0 American service members in Afghanistan right now. The evacuation effort was wildly successful. We got out over 120,000 people in record time. So he wanted to give everybody a final update on it, and it was pretty clear he wanted to tell his critics to shove it. Take a look.
The United States ended 20 years of war in Afghanistan, the longest war in American history. We completed one of the biggest airlifts in history, with more than 120,000 people evacuated to safety. The extraordinary success of this mission was due to the incredible skill, bravery, and selfless courage of the United States military and our diplomats and intelligence professionals. And they did it knowing ISIS-K terrorists, sworn enemies of the Taliban, were lurking in the midst of those crowds. And still, the women and men of the United States military, our diplomatic corps, and intelligence professionals did their job and did it well, risking their lives, not for professional gains, but to serve others. Not in a mission of war, but in a mission of mercy. That assumption that the Afghan government would be able to hold on for a period of time beyond military drawdown turned out not to be accurate. But I still instructed our national security team to prepare for every eventuality, even that one. And that's what we did. So we were ready. We got thousands of Afghan translators and interpreters and others who supported the United States out as well. Now we believe that about 100 to 200 Americans remain in Afghanistan, with some intention to leave. Most of those who remain are dual citizens, long-time residents who had early decided to stay because of their family roots in Afghanistan. So we were left with a simple decision. Either follow through on the commitment made by the last administration and leave Afghanistan, or say we weren't leaving and commit another tens of thousands more troops going back to war. That was the choice, the real choice. I was not going to extend this forever war. And I was not extending a forever exit. But I also know that the threat from terrorism continues in its pernicious and evil nature. But it's changed, expanded to other countries. Our strategy has to change too. We will maintain the fight against terrorism in Afghanistan and other countries. We just don't need to fight a ground war to do it. I believe this is the right decision, the wise decision, and the best decision for America. I made a commitment to the American people that I would end this war. And today, I've honored that commitment. It was time to be honest with the American people again. We no longer had a clear purpose in an open-ended mission in Afghanistan. After 20 years of war in Afghanistan, I refused to send another generation of America's sons and daughters to fight a war that should have ended long ago. After more than $2 trillion spent in Afghanistan, a cost that researchers at Brown University estimated would be over $300 million a day for 20 years in Afghanistan, for 2 decades. Yes, the American people should hear this. $300 million a day for 2 decades. If you take the number of 1 trillion, as many say, that's still $150 million a day for 2 decades. What have we lost as a consequence in terms of opportunities? I refuse to continue a war that was no longer in the service of the vital national interests of our people. And most of all, after 800,000 Americans serving in Afghanistan, I've traveled that whole country, brave and honorable service. After 20,744 American servicemen and women injured, and the loss of 2,461 American personnel, including 13 lives, lost just this week, I refuse to open another decade of warfare in Afghanistan.
I have to say, after weeks and weeks of corporate media pro-war, pearl-clutching meltdowns, that was refreshing to hear. So he was defiant once, he was defiant twice, he was defiant 3 times, and this might even be the 4th or 5th time where he came out and was like, "Did I stutter, bitch?" It's ironic because he actually used to have a stutter, but he very clearly was like, "No, I'm going to stick to this, and you guys can shriek and bitch and moan all you want, but that's what we're going to do." So at another point in the speech, he said, "Listen, we warned Americans there 19 times to get out since March. 19 times. So basically saying, like, hey, if you're still there, that's sort of on you, dog. Now, he went on to say, like, yeah, we're still going to try to do evacuation missions to get them out. We have the cooperation of the Taliban. So he said that as well. But he also was like, don't say shit to me about this, because we told them a million times. And I didn't know that fact he brought up, that of the people who remain, most of them are dual citizens. There you go. So, over 120,000 people evacuated. And you want to know how many Americans remain? About a couple hundred. There's about 200 Americans left. They withdrew over 5,000 Americans. That includes service people and contractors and whatever civilians were there. So that's wildly successful, son. That's wildly successful. Now, the only part of that I didn't like is he says, we're going to maintain the fight against terrorism in Afghanistan and other countries. Okay, so are you saying, yeah, we'll keep doing drone strikes and we'll keep doing bombings with fighter jets? Now, I don't know if he's just saying that or if he means it, because it is true that the nearest base we have to Afghanistan is very far away from Afghanistan, which is a good thing because that means we can't just willy-nilly go bomb a wedding party or whatever. But I think that's what he means. I think he means we're going to keep the drone war going. We're going to keep the fighter jets going. And I mean, I highly recommend against that. And the reason I recommend against that is very simple. That's how Trump decided to fight in Afghanistan, and we had a record number of civilian casualties when Trump used that strategy. We dropped over 7,200 bombs or something like that in 2018 or 2019, and we had a record number of civilian casualties. By the way, one group of people he didn't bring up in his speech here, which he should have, is the over 50,000 innocent Afghanistan civilians who died. They count too. They're important too. So the only part I didn't like about that is, we're gonna keep the fight up in the war on terror, and we're gonna do it in Afghanistan and other countries. No, you should end the war on terror. It has objectively failed, and I simply don't trust your ability to do anything right. When they did the retaliatory strike for the ISIS bombing outside of the airport, what happened? He ended up killing children and civilians. And by the way, the government is still sort of denying that. They're like, oh yeah, we killed planners and commanders from ISIS in our strike. And all the evidence and all the data and all the people on the ground say, absolutely not. You killed civilians and children, and here are their names. So ease up on the drone. I get it. Like, the media is hammering him in a million different ways and trying to make it seem like he's weak and all this stuff. And so he might feel like I'm overcompensating now, and I got to make sure, no, I'm tough and I'll bomb stuff. But what happens when you do that and you have terrible intelligence, because obviously your intelligence sucks, is you end up killing women and children and innocent people. So don't do that. Now, I do love how he brought up the price. He said it's $300 million a day for 20 years. There's another report that just came out. The war on terror and all of our wars in the Middle East. Now they say the number, when all said and done, the total amount we will have spent is $8 trillion. $8 trillion and nearly 1 million deaths. 1 million. So understand something. If you, instead of waging these wars, which made the world worse off, if you took this money and just divvied it up and handed it out to the 330 million Americans, you know how much money each American would get? About $24,000. Could have used this money for that. We could use this money to say, let's not wage imperialist, exploitative, dumb wars. Let's just take the $8 trillion and hand it out to Americans. $24,000 apiece. $24,000 apiece. Just to give you a little taste of what could have been, what should have been. But listen, got to keep it real. I got a million problems with Joe Biden, but Joe Biden did the right thing here. And I was wrong. I didn't expect in a million years for him to end the war in Afghanistan. Not at all. I mean, maybe you could have seen him do a Trump-style thing where it was like a fake withdrawal, where you keep thousands there and you're like, we've withdrawn or something. But you're not going to fool me with that shit, because I follow this stuff like a hawk. And like I told you guys when it was Trump, he was fake withdrawing. Trump said he was going to get out like 4 or 5 times, and he just didn't. And I think the generals behind the scenes could just convince him otherwise. And so, he eventually came up with this drawdown, this timeline, which still was a fake drawdown because it still left thousands there. Biden got really outskis. Now, it's over. The Taliban has Kabul. It's done. And I don't really care about the opinions of the nitpickers of the withdrawal, because Kabul was going to fall, Afghanistan was going to fall and become Talibanistan no matter what. So even if we pulled out in 2050, these people would be saying the same things. Oh my God, we should have waited a little longer and withdrawn on a better timeline and moved the deck chairs around on the Titanic a little bit more before we get out. No, just you got to rip the Band-Aid off. You got to get out of there. There's really no reason to be there. And, Biden has really doubled down and tripled down and quadrupled down and held steady on this. And for that, I think he deserves tremendous credit, especially because he was at 55% approval rating on Afghanistan, and then now with all the relentless media propaganda on that specific issue, he dropped to 25% approval. He's at a record low approval for his overall approval rating because of the spike in COVID and because of this. So, but he's staying strong, and he's like, I'm doing the right thing here. Eventually, the history books are going to catch up, but right now the media's hair on fire meltdown mode. And listen, a lot of that has to do with the fact that who does the media listen to? They listen to their connects in the CIA, their connects in the Pentagon, and they're just stenographers to those people. So the deep state wants you to think endless war is good and it's positive, and so now they're nitpicking the withdrawal in a way that they never nitpicked the 20-year occupation, and here we are. So, and we're going to get to a lot more on this later. Most of the show is going to be Afghanistan because there's just so much to say about it, but I like the speech. He's incredibly defiant, and honestly, maybe Bernie would have probably been like this too, but I can't think of anybody other than Bernie and Biden on that stage in the Democratic primary who would have really stuck to their guns this much. Mayor Pete would have folded like a cheap lawn chair under the slightest bit of media pressure. Kamala Harris would have done the same thing. I don't think anybody would have really had the cojones, except clearly Biden and Bernie, to make a decision, stick to it, let the chips fall where they may, and be aggressive in their pitch. So, on this issue specifically, riding with Biden.